If you look at traditional drug and alcohol treatment, the success rate's around 5%. And then when you ask people, what's the percentage of people who can quit addiction just with their own willpower? It's 5%. So what did they do? They just helped the people that were going to quit anyways to quit when, boom, you got Ibogaine. This thing's like, it's got to be close to 100% effective when done in the right set and setting.
Welcome to the Wellness Amazon podcast, where we talk about everything body, mind, and spirit, health and wellness. No subject is taboo here, and we have fun peeling back all the layers. Let's do this. Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of the Wellness Amazon podcast. Ooh, we have such a treat today for y'all, and we're going to make it beginner-friendly, no worries, but we're going to talk about psychedelics and why they are actually important, and it might not be what you think it is, so we don't have to think about, the 70s and everybody tripping on LSD. Maybe, yeah, but they have a purpose. They have a fulfillment, and I am very honored to have Zappy Zapolin today on the show, who is called Psychedelic Concierge, and he really is fighting for making it more accessible because of the purpose that it has, and make life easier for people and help people get better. And I'm so glad you're on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day today for us, Zappy.
Yes, thank you for having me. I think, all of us right now, the world's so chaotic. You don't know up and down, peace, war, all these things. And so how do we reconcile that? And you can't really do what we used to do, talk it through, take some antidepressants, something like that, drink some alcohol. It's not going to work. People understand that. And now that we've got the researchers in from Johns Hopkins and Yale and all these, incredible institutions, Stanford, it's very clear that the psychedelic medicine done medically is our only way out. It is the only thing that's going to break a fentanyl addiction, is the only thing that's going to reverse, a lifetime of depression or, some horrible thing happen like suicide or in your family or your surroundings, that you could overcome that grief using these incredible plants and other compounds in order to, just be back to your own frequency. And that's what this whole thing is all about. So I'm excited. I love that there's, a lot of times I'm talking to these psychedelic groups and they're just going, yeah, everything I say. But it really feels better to talk to, an audience where, some of the people, I'm sure everybody's hearing about this on the fringes somewhere, but, to bring that back to how mainstream it's just become is fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so starting from total zero, right? Like, I'm going to pretend like I've never even heard this. Talk to me like I'm 5. What in the world are psychedelics?
So there are quite a few varieties of psychedelics. And what's beautiful about it is that they each have a different sort of frequency vibration to them, a certain energy. And they're all, that frequency is meant to support all these different things. Some are for addiction, some are for mental health, some are for peak performance. We now know that some are for stroke, some are for, all kinds of, just you name it. If you're out of touch with nature, there's one for that. But, for me, I really believe that there's an intelligence in the universe. And if, some intelligence can create the human eye and the human brain and, all these incredible things. And it just would make sense to me that power would have put some natural things here to help us with addiction and depression and these types of things. That just only makes sense. And then when you realize we have receptors for these things in our brains, so obviously we're supposed to be interacting with these things. And kind of what happened, the reason we don't know about psychedelics like we should right now is that there was this sort of perfect storm that happened in the 1960s, which was the Vietnam War, which, the government had tested the psychedelics and realized that people were not going to go fight in wars and kill people. If they had their mind expanded, that would not be what they would do. Number one. Number two, the pharmaceutical companies had just come out with their SSRIs, their antidepressants, and they wanted those medications to be something that people took for decades. And they found psychedelics to be very disruptive because if they can just cure anxiety or depression or addiction, like you wouldn't need their drugs. So they were very against it. And then third was, and very importantly, were the alcohol companies, because the alcohol companies had done their own research and they realized that if people were taking psychedelic medicine and marijuana, they were not going to drink alcohol. And that one day, like a day like today, 2026, would come where the younger people weren't going to drink alcohol anymore. They were going to be more in tune with plant medicine and things like that, cannabis, mushrooms and things. So they said, aha, all three of them got together and said, we've got to suppress this. We have got to, scare the hell out of people, tell them they're going to go crazy. They're going to jump off a roof. They're going to lose their mind. They're going to melt their brain, like whatever we got to tell them, even if it's not backed by any science or it's manipulated, we've got to have this, we can't have this come out. It's just too disruptive. So all those forces created this prohibition. And I really believe that when we look back in history, we're going to see that, humans going away from plants and natural things towards chemicals and science and technology was really disruptive. We disrupted, generations of people now. And but the exciting thing is I think they're also going to look back a few hundred years from now and say, oh, you know what? Those people that lived at the beginning of the millennia, they went back to plants, they rejected technology and AI and all that. They just, also integrated plants into what they were doing. And for that reason, we owe them a debt of gratitude that they brought us back to the natural. And so, for people that don't know, we have receptors in our brain for these things. They, in most cases, they grow out of the ground organically. And so I always say to people, I wouldn't want to die and, go be sitting there in front of God. And God's like, okay, what are you doing here? And I go, oh, I died of this disease or I killed myself or whatever it is. And God's like, well, why didn't you take some of those natural things that I left there for anxiety, depression, addiction? And I go, oh, well, yeah, but this guy in a white coat told me not to do it. And God's going to be like, okay, well, guess what? You're going back for another 100 lifetimes because you didn't learn anything. You didn't listen to yourself and your intuition. So we've got a really amazing opportunity because, what most people don't know is that the antidepressants, you take those every day, they build up in your body, they change your brain chemistry. And, the reality is you're only really supposed to be on those things for like 3 weeks just to kind of like, try to stabilize you a little bit. And people are on these for years and decades and they can never get off. And their side effects are just absolutely horrendous, worse in some cases than the, affliction. And so here we are, we've got these incredible plant medicines and compounds that come from nature. And we get to take advantage of those in this time. And I think one of the biggest things that's happened is a lot of the science that was done in the 1960s that showed that this was very effective with psychiatrists and people like that were working on these different mental health conditions. When those were, done, people in today's modern society were like, discounted that as, oh, that was, research done years ago and who knows, blah, blah, blah. But now we've had Johns Hopkins, Yale, Stanford, University of California, San Francisco, many others do their own modern research as soon as, last week and, this year. And it's overwhelming. How positive this is and how effective these things are and how safe they are. And so that had to happen because people were not necessarily, just putting up with the old science and data that had come out years ago. And there's a really interesting podcast that I saw recently with Tony Robbins. He was on the Patrick Bet-David podcast. And
Uh-huh.
for people who don't know, Patrick Bet-David, he's like a pretty straight guy. I
I
don't think
love
he's
him.
ever smoked a joint or anything. I love the guy. He says so straight. And he's got Tony Robbins on there. And he says to Tony, he said, what's the best thing you've ever seen for depression? And Tony Robbins goes, Johns Hopkins psilocybin study for depression. It was proven over 60% effective for depression. And Anthony, Patrick Bet-David was like, you could see his brain melting, you know. And Tony Robbins was like, I was so impressed with the research, he goes, that I decided to redo the test myself with my own people, my own scientists and medical team, and all these incredible people. He's like, I did the entire thing again, and my results came out. It was over 80% effective against depression. And that, you know, after 1 month, people were feeling really good, but after a year, it was even better. Like, nothing works like that. And I mean, Patrick Bet-David, his brain like literally melted in his head. But you know, that's like Tony Robbins. He's like, he's not just putting up with old science. He had to test it himself. But for him to say over 80%, it's like, what are we doing? You know, like, if that is the case, and we got a suicide crisis, we've got a addiction crisis, we've got a depression crisis, you know, all, and then we've got real traumatic things happening, like a war taking place, or maybe the air is poison, you can't drink the water. It's like we're living in a time of PTSD. This is like the PTSD era that we're living in. And we have these incredible things that work so quickly, so effectively, no side effects. And, you know, that's why I'm happy to be here today, because I think a lot of the propaganda that was done on people has made them very scared. And it was, you know, 50 years of perpetual negative things about this. Most of it funded by the alcohol companies, because they're the ones that had the most to lose. The pharmaceutical companies, they're starting to shift over to psychedelic medicine anyways. They're going to be the ones that, you know, distribute the psilocybin mushrooms in the future. So, you know, in this time, you know, we've got this opportunity, and it's just a matter of getting educated, because once you get educated, you know, you realize, you know, people aren't afraid to take ginseng or afraid to take, you know, ashwagandha and these different things. It's just that they've been told that, you know, you're going to go crazy, you're going to jump out of building. And, you know, the reality is tens of millions of people have taken psychedelics and mushrooms and things, and many of them are the top business people in the world. And the reality is that the only people that ever have a really negative reaction are people who are mentally ill to begin with. They were probably going to commit suicide anyways. Had nothing to do with this. And if they were given the proper medicine in the first place, in the right set and setting, they probably wouldn't have even killed themselves. But, you know, these are mentally ill people. And of course that, you know, when you have tens of millions of people doing it, it's kind of like, I describe it like a peanut allergy. So there are, you know, 2,500 people a year that have a peanut allergy that could die or do die. And, you know, we don't tell everybody not to eat peanuts ever again because of these 2,500 people. But we've got to get testing like that for, you know, the different psychedelics, so people can know, oh, okay, fungus is not good for me, but, you know, this other compound would be great. It's not, you know, doesn't have to do with that. And so, you know, it's just being smart now about the fact that I think after the pandemic, everybody realized that we can't go back to what we used to do to try to solve these problems, which was, you know, antidepressants, talk therapy, self-medicating with alcohol. It's just, that doesn't work. We know it. Everybody knows that. And after the pandemic, people got a lot more comfortable realizing that they had to take their health into their own hands. And a lot of doctors who still, you know, I make this point, it's not particularly loved by doctors when I say it, but it's the truth, which is that most doctors don't even know about nutrition. Okay, which could solve 80% of the problems that they're working on. And why would we think that they know about plant medicine and psychedelics? They don't. And if you're going to sit around and wait for your doctor, who's probably unhealthy, probably, overweight and the whole thing and looks terrible, and suicide rates among doctors and dentists is higher than, most groups. If you're going to wait around for them to give you the okay, I'm concerned about you, because
Yeah.
they are not the authorities at this point. Johns Hopkins doctors are, Yale Medical School, they have real hands-on experience. Your local doctor in, Boca Raton, who, has no idea what he's
Yeah.
talking about as it relates to plant medicine. So it's best to take your information from experts.
Yeah. Boy, could I tell you stories, but that would totally derail us. But I could tell you stories of doctors I have encountered that said things where I thought, did that just really come out of your mouth? Okay. Um,
Mhm.
but I find it fascinating. I want to go back to Tony Robbins saying 80%, right? And then you telling us that we're with 80%, and we're still in the baby steps of actually exploring this whole realm. We know almost nothing. Because when you talk about there's different compounds, there's different plant materials, there's different dosages, there's different timing, there's different cases on how we do need to. We know nothing of that. If we crack the code, right, with being open minded and putting science onto this, you can tailor this perfectly, and maybe you don't even have in those very severe cases of somebody really, really being mentally ill to the point where you think it's a goner. Maybe they're not,
Mhm.
because we just haven't figured out the right dosage or the right whatever, you know?
Yes. This is something that ancient cultures have been doing for thousands of years, and so we have so much anecdotal evidence. We have so many, millions of people. There's something really big that's happening, and it's a tipping point moment. It could be today, it could be tomorrow, it's going to be any day right now. That's huge. It's going to change everything in society. The DEA recently asked Health and Human Services, which is run by RFK Jr., to make a recommendation on rescheduling psilocybin off of Schedule 1. And the definition of a Schedule 1 drug, which includes heroin, cocaine, all these horrible drugs, crack and everything, but all the psychedelics are on Schedule 1. They're illegal to use. And the definition of Schedule 1 is no medical benefit and highly addictive. So that's how they put that schedule together. So the fact of the matter is,
Mhm.
psilocybin mushrooms have incredible uses for mental health, physical health, longevity, you name it. It's incredible. And it's also one of the least addictive compounds on the planet. You cannot get addicted to it. So it never should have been on Schedule 1 in the first place. So Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., they've asked now for a recommendation. We just saw cannabis get rescheduled from Schedule 1, where it's been, to Schedule 3, which means a doctor can recommend it. Um, and they're admitting that it does have medical benefits, is why they moved it on the schedule. So we are about to have a rescheduling on psilocybin mushrooms from Schedule 1 off of that prohibitive schedule, and probably to Schedule 3, just like cannabis. But the exciting thing is that psilocybin mushrooms have already had a phase 1 clinical trial. And for that reason, they are going to be available to Americans under the Right to Try Act, which Donald Trump put into place during his first term. It was mostly there for cancer treatments where a drug had been proven safe, gone through a phase 1 clinical, but it didn't have long-term data. So they said, okay, even if it doesn't have long-term data, if it's been proven to be safe enough, you can use it. It's your right to try it. But, you can't sue anybody if something happens. You're doing this, on your, as your own right to do. And so as soon as this gets rescheduled, which literally could be today, psilocybin mushrooms are going to be available. And I'm predicting that tens of millions of people are about to take psilocybin mushrooms. And um, there's a statistics that says 39 million people in the United States are psychedelic curious. A large percentage of those people are going to need to be guided. And this could happen any second now. And it's so exciting because when psilocybin mushrooms came into the culture in the 1960s, they changed everything, from music to art to business models to culture. All these things started to change. So, um,
Oh.
yeah, and so, because back in the '60s, when the Renaissance hit last time, it's very easy for people to suppress that because there was only, ABC, NBC, and CBS, and a few national newspapers and things like that. So if they wanted to say, "Oh, this is bad for you," and suppress it, they could do it. Well, now with social media,
Mhm.
post-pandemic
Mhm.
AI, they can't suppress it. It's coming out, and so what's happening that's really cool is that the moms in the Midwest, there's these groups like Moms for Microdosing, and they're starting to microdose these psilocybin mushrooms, and it's ripping through the middle of the country because they're having good experiences. Then they're sharing it with their neighbors and their PTA, and it's literally like ripping through the middle of the country, which is exciting because there's sort of three ways to usually take psychedelics. One is a microdose, and a microdose is supposed to be a sub-perceptual amount, so little that you don't feel it, consciously feel it. There's something happening. There's neuroplasticity and new neural pathways growing, but it's such a low dose that you go through your day. There's also the macro dose. This is like what you might call a hero dose, where you're taking a very large dose, ideally under proper supervision. And if that happens, you can completely change your life from that experience. You can have this experience of not only, seeing things from a different perspective, but afterwards you're metabolizing, you're growing these neural pathways, you're putting your brain into a state that's called neural plasticity. And when your brain's more neuroplastic, when bad things happen, which they do in life, it doesn't come into this rigid pattern that says, "Oh, I'm a
Yeah.
failure. Nothing's going to work. Nobody loves me." Instead, it's going to come into this neuroplastic state, and you're going to think something like, "Oh, wow, this is interesting. Let me see where this goes. It seems like it could be good," that kind of thing. It's not hitting these old rigid
Mhm.
patterns. These are new patterns. And then the third way to take it is what I would call like a social dose. So on a social dose, you're taking a low amount, and this is with mushrooms, an incredible thing. This is what's going to replace alcohol on Friday and Saturday night. People, you just take a social dose of mushrooms. They're laughing, they're having fun. As a friend of mine always said that, you know, he felt like everybody's just going through life trying to regulate their nervous system. So throughout the day, to
Mhm.
regulate your nervous system, you throw some coffee in there, and then you're like, "Oh, I'll take some alcohol," and then, "Oh, I better take an Ambien to go to sleep," and this pattern of just trying to get yourself to balanced. But when you take a microdose on a regular basis, all of a sudden now you're balanced. So you wake up, you're like, I don't think I need a coffee. I'm not even hungry. Okay. And then, you eat a little later, you don't drink, and you don't need, pills to put you to sleep. And so this is going to be the biggest revolution in mental health that's ever happened. It would have been in the '60s, but we went into prohibition. And so here we are in this beautiful time. And thank God, with AI and all the responsibility that comes with that, we also have mushrooms and things like that that are, from nature and can help us to deal with these really big situations right now. Because it seems like, and you probably see this in your own life, it seems like there's a lot of people who are stuck in these patterns of thinking, and they're scared and they're
Mhm.
frozen. They don't even know what to do. They're just like, and they've just frozen. And the psychedelic medicine in the right set and setting, the right mindset, and the setting is who you're with and where you're doing them. If you're in the right set and setting, you are going to have this uh, new brain state, this incredible opportunity to not only heal yourself, but become more intelligent, become more empathetic. Because, right now, that type of a pattern interruption is what people need. Then they get pattern interrupt out of all these spun out patterns, and they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, holy shit! I'm here, I'm fine, I'm going into the future. Okay, this is going to be interesting." And this is not one in, in many. This is, like Tony Robbins said, 80% of people with treatment resistant depression that nothing else
Yeah.
worked for are 80% recovered. They do not even have the signs of PTSDs. Like, not only are they better, they don't on a scale have the symptoms of PTSD. So, and we just got to embrace this and try to undo all that negative propaganda that happened from the pharmaceuticals and the alcohol companies and the government at one point or another. So, great time to be
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah. It's always
And
interesting when we talk about natural compounds and natural medicines. There's always problems with that because it is, well, hard to patent on it, right? So follow the money.
yes. Yes, gotta follow the money.
Mhm.
What's really cool about psychedelics for me is that, they each have their own sort of frequency vibration. And so, depending on what you need, there are literally compounds to heal all of this. And so, what people don't realize is just like we know that all the pharmaceutical medicines kind of come originally from plants, they're, originally taken from plants or they're synthesized from plants, whether it's aspirin or this and that. It's all, comes from our knowledge of plants. And so
Mhm.
we know that these different compounds have different attributes so that, for example, psilocybin mushroom, microdosing, if you've lost your joy in life, microdosing psilocybin will bring back that joy very quickly. If you are out of touch with nature, there's a cactus, San Pedro, that will put you immediately back in touch with nature. And so many people, they're walking around in their shoes on concrete and going, and they never even touch the ground. They're so out of touch. And then bam, the cactus brings them back to nature. Iboga, which is an African root that can break a heroin addiction in one session. It can break, any kind of addiction, quite frankly. 2 packs of cigarettes, alcohol your whole life, your whole lineage has it. Bam, you do the Iboga, it resets you to your original frequency before everybody, society and school and everybody put their stuff on you. You're back there. Now you're vibrating at your own frequency. And when somebody says to you, "Hey, do you want to do some drugs?" You're just like, it doesn't really resonate with me. No, thanks. And so to be able to put somebody back there with Iboga, incredible. On and on. Ayahuasca that a lot of people have heard about. This is a root and they take a root and a vine and they put it together and they brew this ayahuasca tea, you drink it, and you have this spirit of your grandmother, Mother Nature, and she's hugging you, and so many people, have, especially probably women, they have this problem with their mother and this conflict that they're in between their two frequencies. And then they have the ayahuasca and they get the hug from the grandmother that they needed. And all of a sudden they're just like, oh my God, like I'm me, all this stuff that happened to me, it just kind of happened to me, but it's not me. And so you see these things happen overnight. That's like the most fun part about psychedelics is, you think about a diet or trying to get somebody, mentally well, you're talking months, years, whatever it is. S- Psychedelics in the right set and setting, you're talking about hours, days, something like that for a full
Yeah.
transformation. And so, even, people think that the psychedelics that are, they think that they're chemicals, for example, LSD, people are, oh, I would never take LSD. That's chemicals. And I'm like, no, LSD was synthesized from a fungus that grows on rye seeds. And that's how they originally found it. And you can still get it right from the plant, but we've synthesized it so that it's
Yeah.
easier for people to take. So that one, again, not a chemical. People think ketamine, which is an incredible, probably because it's FDA approved, it's really the only psychedelic medicine right now that's FDA approved, ketamine, because it's used as an anesthetic hundreds of thousands of times a day in emergency rooms. It's very safe. But they realized, and I'll tell that story how they realized it, but it's very effective. But people think it's chemicals, like, oh, I'd never do that. And the the ketamine, once again, it's created from a salt. They take some salts and minerals and they process it and they get this new ketamine crystal. And so again, all of these things are organic from the earth. They are. And so the thing about ketamine, and this is really our biggest triage opportunity that we have, because ketamine, they use it as an anesthetic every day in the for surgeries, and they use it on babies and young people because it doesn't affect your breathing. It works really quickly. If somebody comes in the emergency room, they got a stitch up in their mouth, they give them a shot of ketamine, they sit there, no pain, they let them do their thing, and then it wears right off after, 20, 30 minutes, and they didn't have to have like an anesthesiologist there. It's just very, very safe. So the reason that they found out it was so effective for depression and things is that during Vietnam, in the battlefield, they were doing all of these amputations of people's limbs, and they were using all different anesthetics, ether, morphine, ketamine, all these. And they look back after the war, and they realized that the people that had the amputation with the ketamine anesthetic had not committed suicide anywhere near the rates that everybody else had. And so they're like, "Wow, what's up with the ketamine?" They send it to Yale University. Dr. John Crystal did a 2,000 plus person study on the ketamine, and they came up with not an anesthetic, which is a higher dose to, kind of knock somebody out to do surgery, but a low dose of ketamine is 72% effective against even treatment resistant depression that nothing else has worked for. So it's really exciting. It really works. It works quickly. And you're starting to see clinics pop up all over the place in the United States. And it's so amazing because I found out about ketamine in 2015 because, back a little bit of background. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I'm passionate about these plant medicines. And I decided to make a documentary called The Reality of Truth. And I made that movie starting in 2010 when I had my own sort of spiritual midlife crisis, where I had done everything society told me to do to be fulfilled. I go to school, may have a family, make millions of dollars, be a philanthropist. You will be totally fulfilled. And I literally did it. And I was sitting there, I was like, I'm not fulfilled. Like, I'm having fun, but I don't even know what I'm doing here. Like, is this life like worth it even? Like, if this is it and I did it, like, what am I doing here? And so I remembered back to an early psychedelic experience that I had that informed the rest of my life when I was a teen, where I was on psychedelics and I looked at my hand and I could see that it was trillions of atoms and they were vibrating at a certain frequency. And then I looked over at my friend and he was the exact same atoms. He was just a slightly different frequency than me. And the table slightly different. I was like, oh my God, everything, the air in between us was a different frequency. And I never could really unsee that. But when I hit this midlife crisis, this spiritual midlife crisis in 2010, I was like, you know what? I think I got to go back inside of myself and maybe get some answers and some healing, like I did, really go inside. And I thought, I think I got to go sit with a shaman. I had heard about ayahuasca, people going to the jungle and sitting with shaman and having that experience. So I had cameras around me from my marketing company and stuff. And I said, I think I'm going to document myself going and doing this ayahuasca. I got really lucky and I was able to, through a friend, convince Michelle Rodriguez, the actress from Fast and Furious, to come with me to do ayahuasca, me and my friends, and film it. And so we did that. It was transformative for all of us. Michelle had an absolute life-changing experience there. And so coming back from that, uh, I kept on saying to everybody, "Oh my God, you got to do plant medicine, go to the jungle, sit with a shaman." And all the people that really needed it, my friends that really needed it, they were saying to me, Zappy, I can't really do it. They're like, if I tell my family I'm going to go to the jungle and sit with a shaman, like they're going to Baker Act me and they're going to put me in a mental institution right now. No way. And I was like, oh, I got to find a Western medicine approach to this. And somebody in 2015 showed me the Yale University data on ketamine. I was like, oh my God, like I got to try this. And so I convinced a doctor locally to gave me the treatment, and it's you can take it in an IV form, you can take an intramuscular shot, and now they have a lozenge that melts in your mouth, goes through your mucosa. So I
Mhm.
got the IV, and about 5 minutes into it, the ketamine hit me, and I was like, "Oh my God, like this is what all of society needs right now, just to slow the world down a little bit." And then they had proven that when the ketamine metabolizes, it actually grows new neural pathways in your brain around trauma and depression. So as soon as I realized that, I just was like, I gotta evangelize this because this is FDA approved. It's very approachable by us Western culture. And so I got excited. Fortunately, like I said, Michelle Rodriguez, she's incredible in the movie, The Reality of Truth. The film won the Amsterdam Film Festival. It's been seen over 25 million times now, and it's said to have caused over 1 million people to have a psychedelic experience because they watched the movie, and we're really proud of it. And so I was showing that movie around the country, and somebody came up to me after one of those screenings, and they said, "Hey, I'm friends with Lamar Odom, the basketball player, Kardashian, and he's not in a good place right now. And I wonder if you would talk to him about plant medicine." So I was like, "Oh, wow, yeah, he'd be an incredible subject." So I wound up talking to him, and as I said, I couldn't, it was unrealistic that I could get him down to the jungle to do plant medicine. But I said, "Look, come to the doctor's office, do a ketamine treatment, FDA approved." His family, his friends, they all said, "Yep, it sounds good." He came, he'd never done psychedelics before. He'd always been told that it was like, you go crazy and the whole thing. And as soon as it hit him, he was like, "Oh, wow. Like, wow. This is transformational. This is calming, everything I needed." He's building new neural pathways. He feels like he's getting more intelligent. He feels like he's you know, um, recovering from some of the uh, brain damage that he did when he was in a coma and stuff like that. So as he got more comfortable, I said, "Look, as a lifetime addict, if you want to overcome your addiction, you're going to have to go down to Mexico and do Ibogaine, because it's one of these situations where to get that monkey off your back, you've got to get all the way back to your original frequency. And, you're an African American guy and there's an African root. Like, who knows? Maybe you're supposed to be taking this, but you've just been cut off culturally from it." And so he agreed and his folks agreed, and he came down to Mexico. And just, I'll put out there that he's had a lot of trauma in his life. His mom passed away at 12 years old of cancer, died he had watched her die in front of him. And um, he had a young son, 6 months old, that passed away, and he never processed any of this grief. He just kind of tried to stay busy and drink some alcohol, take some drugs, some girls, go to Vegas, whatever he had to do not to think about it. And it was disrupting his
Mhm.
life. And so when he went down there and he did it, it was a total transformation. 48 hours after. And the Ibogaine, Iboga is a root, an African root. And there's something called Ibogaine where they just basically take the Ibogaine alkaloid from the plant. And instead of eating the root bark, you just take one pill of the Ibogaine, you get 1,000 milligrams. And a lot of times that's an easier thing for people to do. So he took the Ibogaine with the doctor. You've got to do it with the doctor there and a guide. Um, but he had this transformation where it does a physical reset on you and a mental reset. Uh, Absolutely incredible. Science is out that after you do the Ibogaine, you are 1.3 years younger physiologically than you were in the hours before you did it. And that's an average. Some people are 3 years younger, 5 years younger. It's like, it's insane. Women start to get their menstruation back, older women, like guys, just like start to, be more stronger. And the Ibogaine was sold over the counter in the 1950s under a French brand called Lambrine for like virility, and they already proved that it was safe. So it never should have been on this Schedule 1 because it's already been proven to be safe, so it shouldn't be on there. And so he came out of it and he said 48 hours later, he was like, "You know what?" He goes, "I feel so good physically and mentally." He goes, "I think I can make a comeback in professional basketball." And we were like, "Wow," and his trainer, bodyguard was there with us in Mexico. And the guy was like, "Lamar, take it easy, dude." He's like, "You're 40 years old. You have to train 4 hours a day. You can't be smoking marijuana, whole thing." And Lamar's like, "I know what I got to do. I'm doing it." And nobody motivated this guy. He just started training and training and training. And he wound up playing 6 months later or so in a professional basketball game in Dubai. And it was like his personal Rocky moment. And he was like, "You know what? I'm not the player that I used to be, and I can't play every day." But he's like, I should be dead, and here I am. I'm playing
Yeah.
basketball in a professional game. And he reconnected with his kids. They wound up living with him after that. And he's got a great relationship with them now. He's hasn't done hard drugs in 6 years. He uses cannabis as medicine, which I believe it is, and it's very healthy. But he hasn't taken drugs. And he actually called me a couple days after Kobe Bryant, his teammate, died, who he'd won championships, was like an older brother to him. And he comes by, he calls me up and he said, "Zappy," he goes, "I just want to tell you this." He goes, "The day that Kobe died," he goes, "I knew as a lifetime addict that I could use drugs that day and everybody was just going to give me a pass on it." He goes, "But I don't know, since the day of that
Hmm.
Ibogaine," he goes, "I just didn't have the desire to do it." And I was like, wow, like what a testimonial not to have to, you know, abstain because, there might be listeners who are, sober or they've been to AA and they've been at it a long time. And when I've gone to AA meetings and I observe the people there, because I go, I've been with a friend who wanted me to go, and I look around and these people are, yes, we're sober. And they're smoking their vape and they're, having 6 coffees with 10 sugars and they're eating a sub sandwich and they're taking their Xanax and they're like, "I'm totally sober. I have to come back to a meeting in 2 hours so I don't use." I'm like, that's not a life. Like, why wouldn't you just do Iboga or Ibogaine and like have it done, like rewire your brain in a healthy
Hmm.
way? Because they say that one of the things that the Ibogaine does is it wipes your prefrontal cortex, so you have no cravings when you come out. So it's like you don't even want a coffee. You don't want, you could be smoking 2 packs of cigarettes and come in there, and after the Ibogaine, you're just like, I don't think I'm gonna smoke. It doesn't. It's kind of gross, And so, to have something like that available to us in a society where we've got fentanyl. Literally, people are not trying to get addicted to fentanyl. These are just people who have like a pain injury or a surgery or dental, and then they're on pain pills. And then, they can't get those anymore, but they're still in pain. So then they got to get them on the street. They're laced with fentanyl. Now they're addicted to fentanyl. These are good people. They're not drug addicts that are just trying to like,
Yeah.
escape reality. This is like real family, friends, people in our community. And now the stuff's laced, so you're gonna die. And if we have Ibogaine that can break an addiction and have you not have any interest in that, what are we doing as a society that we would say, "Oh, well, we don't have enough information about this plant medicine, but still we'll like if it's a vaccine or if it's a pharmaceutical, it's like we don't have any idea what those things do long term, but we're still giving them everybody." And then I want to make this last point about this
Yeah.
is like, these things are on schedule 1, which means no medical benefit and highly addictive. And so sometimes people say to me, "Well, Zappy, maybe the government just doesn't have enough data yet to, show that they're safe enough." And I say, "Okay, well, if that's the case, then, and definition of schedule 1 is no medical benefit and highly addictive." I'm like, why aren't cigarettes on schedule 1? They're killing, millions of people. Why aren't they on
Yeah.
schedule 1? "Oh, well, because and it's like we've got to accept that we are in 2026. We've got a suicide, addiction, depression epidemic. We've got people really scared about wars and real things. And we have to let these people take advantage of nature and get back to this healing that's been around for thousands and thousands of years. And not as humans pretend that we know better than nature and technology is going to save us, not, ourselves and our environment. So it's a great moment to be alive and to see this stuff really starting to come out into society. It's very gratifying to see it finally happening. So fun to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And it's like you said, it's when you're in that realm and you do watch these things and you do listen to a lot of podcasts and all that stuff, it is happening. I mean, it is happening. I see it a lot with veterans and PTSD. There's some research. And then there's even a couple of companies, and I don't remember their names, but they send you a kit. So they have an online coach. They're going to be with you on the phone the entire time. They
Mhm.
send you like the sleepy mask, and
Yes.
then I think it is ketamine. And of course, you have to have a doctor's prescription and all these things. And you get it at home, and they tell you exactly how to do it, exactly what to use, and they stay with you on the phone the entire time. And you get some
Yes.
meditation in the headphones and all that stuff. And it's even that is a huge step because now I'm giving multiple doses to you, but I trust you that you
Mhm.
only take what I tell you, right? So they know that even if you take
Yeah.
the whole thing,
Yeah.
nothing's going to happen
Yeah,
because
exactly.
otherwise
But
they wouldn't
it,
do it, right?
yeah, these are
So
these are
we're
some
getting
of the
somewhere.
safest compounds in the world done properly with guidance. They say you could take your body weight, your own body weight, eat your own body weight in mushrooms, and you still wouldn't die. So I don't think you could get 145 pounds of me mushrooms down my throat. But like the fact that that would not kill you, but you know. All these medicines that you see on TV, it's all, the whole commercials about the possible side effects, and you see these drugs that are like, for depression, it says,
Mhm.
could cause suicidal thoughts, could cause worsening depression, could cause loss of libido, weight gain. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, all they have to do is take like $2 worth of mushrooms. You know what I mean? A micro dose, like I don't know, $2, $3 worth. The ketamine is so cost effective, few dollars a dose, and unfortunately, we ran up against the alcohol companies and the antidepressants and wars and things, and so we don't have access to these. But when a prohibition ends, the uptake on it is huge. So when alcohol came out of prohibition, all of a sudden it was like people started drinking, and boom, it hits really hard. And so same thing here with, psychedelics. As we
Mhm.
come out of this prohibition, right now we're starting to get, people into the mix and they're being supported. And then boom, you're going to see it hit. And tens of millions of people are about to take psilocybin mushrooms because of the Right to Try Act coming up. And it's going to change all of society. It is going to eliminate most of the big mental health situations we have just with people microdosing psilocybin, or if they need a bigger dose because they've had some, serious trauma that they've got to overcome. Getting them into that neuroplastic state is the best thing we can do for people right now.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you were talking about the alcohol industry and what they did, the big coup that they did back then, because I am still baffled to this day that alcohol is something that is actually extremely dangerous, but so incredibly socially acceptable. I mean, when I stopped drinking, I had weird comments coming my way all the time. Hey, Melina, you want a glass of wine? No, thank you. I don't drink. What do you mean you don't drink? Why don't you drink? Like, never? You would never in the wildest dreams go to a party and somebody come and offer you a line of Coke and you go, oh, no, thanks. I don't do
What?
Coke. What, like
Yeah.
never? Like, why? Nobody says that.
Uh,
But with alcohol, it's totally normal to be like, what do you mean you don't drink? That's weird. And it's like, do you understand that this is just as addicting and
oh
just as
no.
harmful
It's
as any
actually
of the stuff that
probably
are not
worse too. A
socially
friend of mine
acceptable?
told me that
You know?
alcohol, the root word of alcohol
Mhm.
is this Arabic word that's alcool. And alcool, the definition of alcool is body eating spirit. And I'm like, wow, that's a pretty good definition of alcohol. It's like, oh, this body eating spirit. Yes, I feel it. It does have that spirit to it. And so, um, yeah, we just got to educate people. I think that's the beautiful part about this whole renaissance. And, I've had discussions recently with the top people in AI and some of these, billionaire founders and these folks, and they're coming to it. I mean, Silicon Valley is, all these breakthroughs in technology that we're all enjoying were originally fueled by somebody having a psychedelic experience and thinking outside of the box, using more of their brain, because that's
Mhm.
what we have this opportunity to do. They say ketamine, when you look under a scanner, it's like the limitless drug. You turn your brain on 80%, and all of a sudden you're having new ideas. And Elon Musk, we know that he's does ketamine twice a month for his depression, which I believe he does probably have, because I'm sure it's very annoying going into a room and everybody's
Mm.
much stupider than you. You have to keep explaining things over and over and over and over. And it's like you must be so frustrated. But at the same time, to develop the new physics and break these industries that have been around for, hundreds of years, to change them, you have to be able to be thinking outside of the box. And Silicon Valley, there's a lot of microdosing with LSD. Usually LSD take 100 micrograms to have an experience. So what people are doing is a microdose is usually a tenth of a regular dose. So you take a tenth of that amount, and you're
Mhm.
not tripping, but your brain is operating in a way that is different than when you're, thinking all of these negative thoughts, and you're connected to all these brain states that keep looping. And so as you evolve and you build these new neural pathways on microdosing, they're having these breakthroughs. That's where all the Silicon Valley breakthroughs are coming from, is these microdosing protocols. And so we have to
Mhm.
get these, thank God, like I said, in the Midwest, mushrooms are really raging through there, through the mothers and through women. And, women make most of the healthcare decisions in the family. If something is good for them, they're going to give it to the husband or suggest it, and the children or whatever it is. And, I think that, by having this happen through the Midwest is the most important thing that's happening right now for psychedelics. It's People think it's like, what's happening on the East Coast or West Coast, and the research, and it's not. It's the masses of real people putting this into their life in a microdose and having more joy, more connection to their family, less anxiety. And so it's just, I mean, this is the best time to be alive, ever. We got antibiotics, air conditioning, airplanes, it's like, and now we have, AI and psychedelics. So like we've got it all now.
Yeah. So are all of them still quote unquote illegal? So you can't
Yeah,
really get your
all of them
hands on
are
any of them
illegal.
right
The
now?
only one that's on schedule, they're all on schedule 1 except ketamine. Ketamine is on schedule 3 because it has such incredible medical uses. They can't say that it doesn't. So it's schedule 3. It's got to be prescribed by a doctor. But because it's so safe, and it's also not, for anybody who's listening, what the reason I really suggest starting with ketamine uh is that it's not a hallucinogenic. So you're not having these hallucinations and things like that. It's what's known as a dissociative. So when it with a dissociative, what it's doing is it's separating your left and right brain and allowing them to communicate any way they want to without your ego being involved in it. So you just lay there with your eye shades, you're laying there or you're in your chair,
Mhm.
and the experience hits after about 5 minutes. It only lasts about 35 minutes where you're watching colors and different things. You might get scenes and different realizations, but no hallucinations. And then after 35 minutes, it just wears off really quick. There's no hangover. You're not, you basically lay there for another half hour, 45 minutes, listening to some relaxing music. And then you get up and, you can go get a smoothie, go hang out with your kids, whatever it is. It comes out of you that fast. But the science is that in the hours after, it's growing these new neural pathways in your brain, and those can be around patterns that you may have inherited, or you may have damaged them with drugs or trauma and things. And so now you're growing new neural pathways of like, I'm here and I'm going into the future. And so yeah. So that is really the only one. In some places like Oregon and Colorado, places in California like Santa Cruz and Oakland, they have been decriminalized by the state, but they're still federally illegal. And that's where we need the change, so that they can be studied,
Hmm.
so we can understand who should and shouldn't take them for different, ailments and things. But we're very, very close. I think the psilocybin being rescheduled, especially now that cannabis has been rescheduled off down to Schedule 3, psilocybin mushrooms are going to be also scheduled there. And millions of people are going to try this over the next year with the right to try. And then the other really important anecdotal or scientific evidence that's going to come is that RFK Jr. said he wants psychedelic medicine to be available to veterans within the next 12 months. So what's going to happen is they are going to access ketamine, they're
Hmm.
going to access psilocybin mushrooms, and they're going to access Ibogaine for, real PTSD to get rid of that. And so when the data comes out of all these veterans who are part of the VA system, so they're going to look back at that a year later and be like, oh, wow, like, look, suicides are down 50% in veterans. We're giving out half as many of these pills as we were before. Wow. Like, we got to get this for the rest of society right now, is what's about to happen when that data comes in. And, I've been lucky enough to be on the front lines. I have a charity with some other people. It's called the Ketamine Fund. And we've given away over 600 free ketamine treatments to veterans, and it's incredible. We've shot some testimonials, and one of the veteran testimonials was a guy who was, um, he was suicidal. He was like, maybe even trying to get shot by the police and that kind of thing in that moment. And they had him on 23 medications from the VA. And he had serious trauma over in Afghanistan, Iraq, and stuff like that. And he had the ketamine infusion in the right set and setting with the doctor. He came out of it and he's like, wow. He's like, I feel different, and he said he went home and he said he hugged his kids and he said he felt love for the first time in 10 years. And he was transformed. He's on no medications.
Wow.
He just does sort of like a once a month or twice a month booster with ketamine to grow more neural pathways and maintain, because if your foundation is weak and disturbed, uh, the idea is the Yale protocol that they came up with for ketamine was you do 6 treatments over 2 weeks and you build up enough of a strong foundation that you're not depressed anymore. And then, once a month or every other month or something, you're going to do a ketamine single session and continue to just rebuild and continue to metabolize and grow new neural pathways. So, I see people go from 23 medications and suicidal to like enjoying their family and their lives and having a new career. I mean, it's the best, that's why this is such a fun thing to be involved with. And I want to like make a
Yeah.
plug right here. I started something called Psychedelic Concierge, which I consider myself a psychedelic concierge. I created this training program for other people because if you think about like a concierge at a hotel, you go up to the concierge desk and you're like, hey, where should we go to eat dinner tonight? And the concierge is going to ask you a series of questions like, what kind of food do you like? Do you want wine, music, indoor, outdoor, and then you tell him and he goes, got the perfect place for you. So with a psychedelic concierge, we're going to talk about what's your intention for trying to do this and what are the traumas that you need to overcome. And based on that, going to make a recommendation like, oh, ketamine would be great for you, or oh, psilocybin mushroom microdose, or oh, you've got addiction. You're probably going to want to do iboga or ibogaine. So that, like a concierge, it's about listening and then making a recommendation. And so, with some partners, we put together this psychedelic concierge training program where we're training people all around the country. We've got people in almost every state right now going through a formal training on all of the medicines, the neuroscience, the ethics, how to guide people, how to guide a group, what to do if something goes haywire, what to do, how to help people to integrate. Because, you know, half of it is the medicine, and then the other half is what you do with it after in your own life, how you integrate that. And if you have somebody who's helping you, you're going to, reach whatever you're looking for. Where right now a lot of the coaches and therapists and stuff, I hear so much frustration from the regular coaches and therapists where they're like, I keep recommending people do this and that, and they just don't do anything. I'm on the phone call every single week. It's like, well, you got to do this, you got to do it. And they just never
Yeah.
change. But when you give somebody the right psychedelic medicine, the right set and setting, they start to have breakthroughs. Start to have ideas. They start to want to live, all this stuff. So the strides that the coaches and therapists can make are huge after their person is more neuroplastic. So we've got nurses and medical people and therapists and, housewives and veterans that we're training to be psychedelic concierges, to be able to make a recommendation, to be able to sit with somebody if that's what they're want to do, and then to help them to integrate it after. And through that process, the healings that are already happening are incredible. And we've got a network where, if I have a client here, let's say in Florida, and they say, "Oh, I think I need to do ayahuasca. I read about it. I heard about it, blah, blah, blah." And then I talk to them. I say, "Okay, well, you know,
Mhm.
what are you trying to achieve? What's your intention? What traumas?" And then I realized that, all they need is probably some psilocybin microdosing. They don't have to go to the jungle. And I'll just start, they could start with that. Now I put them with somebody in the community to guide them. And they have this, breakthrough experience. And so the psychedelic concierge is a very exciting career path. It's one of the only jobs, I'm predicting, one of the only jobs that is not eliminated by AI. And think about AI, it's eliminating a lot of the jobs, like
Mhm.
lawyers and accountants and all these different things. But eventually, with the robots coming now, the plumbers and all these things, they're going to be eliminated too, because it's less dangerous for a robot, and they're not going to get tired, and they're not going to sue you and the whole thing. So those are eliminated, all these jobs. The only ones I think are going to be left are taking care of babies, taking care of the elderly, and psychedelic guiding. Because in that moment where you're having these psychedelic profound experiences, you want to have a human being with you who has a human nervous system. You don't want AI telling you what most people should be feeling at that moment. That's not very helpful. So you're going to want this kind of guidance and integration from a human with a human nervous system. So for that reason, I encourage people to learn about this. Check out psychedelicconcierge.com, learn more. If it resonates with you, get trained, because if you're a coach, a therapist, doctor, anything like that, you're probably already being approached by people asking you about psychedelics. If you're not already, they're about to be en masse. And if you don't know and you can't help them or point them in the right direction or give them some education about, the basics, you're not of any use to them. And so the people that are getting trained, that do know how to hold space,
Mhm.
how to prep people. And a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I want to do that, but it's illegal. I can't do it now." And we have to remind them that everything we're talking about in psychedelic concierge is totally legal. You can prepare somebody for a journey, you can guide them through it, you can help them to integrate it, all legal. The only thing that is illegal is procuring and selling them the medicine, which we are absolutely not telling everybody, do not do that. However, there's some incredible ways through ketamine that's already legal in states where psychedelics have been decriminalized. You can do this work. And there's an opportunity that exists that we have our members do, which is by joining a church, because under the certain churches, and some have already fought these battles in court and won, as long as the people are taking these psychedelic compounds, these plants, these sacraments, for spiritual purposes, to commune with God, you are allowed to do that under the religious exemption. And um, the churches, and there's some churches out there that have gotten in trouble, but they've been in trouble because they're saying cure PTSD, break your addiction, and that's not the claim to make. But the churches
Yeah.
that are sticking to, if
Mhm.
you want to commune with God, if you want to have a spiritual experience, then you can take this compound. And they are, uh, and that right exists, and that's been upheld by the Supreme Court. So we get our folks involved with a church that has already won one of these suits and has proven, and they have to sign off that they're going to use these things for spiritual purposes, not, to try to make some kind of medical claims. But as long as they do that, they're free to use these compounds wherever they want. They're free to guide people. And so it's already happening. I mean, millions of people are starting to take psychedelic medicine, a lot of it being microdose psilocybin, ketamine, and these things. But it's a great career. And even if you don't make a career out of it, to know the basics is critical, because as soon as this becomes legal, what are you going to do when people come to you as a coach, a therapist, a mother, a father, a son, or whatever, and say, I think I could benefit from these. What do you think? And if your answer is, oh my God, I'm scared, blah, blah, you're not going to be helping them. You're going to maybe drive them back to committing suicide, taking drugs, being depressed, taking antidepressant. You're not going to be helping them. But if you know and you're comfortable with the safety profile, you could say to them, hey, you know what? You need to be in the right set and setting, guided by somebody. But absolutely, there's a lot of evidence that these are positive and very safe. So I support you. I believe maybe you want to look into ketamine, or you want to look into microdosing to begin, because the safest thing to do with any compound is to take a little bit, see how it feels, see how it hits you, and then to take more. It's like, I mean, it's like food. Like, you take a bite and see if you like it. You don't like
Yeah.
shove the whole thing in your mouth. So it's like same thing here with psychedelics. You start small and you go up a little bit, and then you figure out what your proper dose is. And it's very simple. Literally, God put these things here on planet Earth for you to heal with, and you have receptors in your body and your brain for these things. So you're meant to interact with them. And if you miss this opportunity, and this might be the harshest thing I'm going to say today, but if you miss the opportunity in this lifetime to do plant medicine, you may have wasted your entire life, and you may have missed out on the most
Hmm.
interesting and beautiful and spiritual experiences that you can have as a human being, because you were disrupted by the medical establishment, the alcohol companies, and the government.
Yes. Amen. Where can
Okay,
people
so I have
watch your movie?
two films out: The Reality of Truth with Michelle Rodriguez and Lamar Odom Reborn. Both of those are available on Amazon Prime. Both of those are available on YouTube for free. So anybody
Hmm.
can watch them on YouTube. Um, and so I would say just, type in The Reality of Truth, Michelle Rodriguez, um, or Lamar Odom Reborn. And the one with Michelle Rodriguez, The Reality of Truth, has every major thought leader weighing in, from, Ram Dass, Marianne Williamson, Joel Osteen, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, uh, Foster Gamble, like just like the who's who of consciousness. And at the end of the day, we explore whether these compounds were in fact used in ancient religions and cultures, what the application is today. And then you get to see Michelle Rodriguez go through this journey where she was already a badass and amazing, but she has this ayahuasca experience with us in the jungle. And you'll see in the movie, she said she steps into her femininity and has this sort of epiphany that she told me while we were down in Peru still. And we were integrating this afterwards after the ayahuasca. And she told me, she's like, Zappy, she's like, I am going to go back to the franchise of the Fast and Furious. She's like, but this time I've always been invited to be a writer and come into the writer's room and be part of that. And she's like, I always felt like a fraud, I didn't want to do it. And she's like, now I'm going to do it. And I'm going to try to write more women's parts. And I'm going to bring forward my energy into these films. And she went ahead and did it, and you see it. And it's powerful. She lost her friend Paul Walker, the actor, who died in an accident. The ayahuasca helped her to process that whole situation. And, at the end of the day, the reason I love her is that she has so much more to lose, than just say a regular person who's sitting here listening to this podcast. She has so much to lose, but she felt
Yeah.
compelled to do this to enhance her life and to get through traumas that she's had, like we've all had. And so when somebody like that does it and they have so much to lose, but they come out well and inspirational. It really inspires, it's inspired over 1 million people to have a psychedelic experience because they watch that movie. And when the movie ends, usually they watch the movie ends and they go, I think I'm doing ayahuasca. And it's like, wow, like that is awesome. Cause they come into that movie 1 hour earlier and they're like, this is crazy. I don't even know what these maniacs are talking about. And then boom, at the end of the movie, they feel it. They understand that this is like your human right to do this. Um, so yeah, check those out. I have a nonprofit that's called the Mind Army. It's a social movement. We're fighting for the right to pursue happiness. We believe it's your inalienable right to go inside of your own mind for answers and healing, to explore your mind. And it just doesn't make any sense to me that as Americans, we're encouraged to explore, explore the West, explore space, all this stuff, but you're not allowed to go inside and explore your own mind. Like that's like modern day slavery, and I'm not with it. And
Hmm.
I'm not going to wait around for doctors who don't know about nutrition to figure this one out. We're in a crisis and we've got to, listen to the authorities, the Johns Hopkins, the Yales, and all that kind of stuff. So I encourage people, dig in there. You will find something that resonates with you. And if you've got somebody around you, like most of us have, who are going through a crisis or depression or addiction, this is the answer. Nothing else is going to work. If you look at traditional drug and alcohol treatment, the success rate's around 5%. And then when you ask people, what's uh, the percentage of people who can quit addiction just with their own willpower, it's 5%. So what did they do? They just helped the people that were going to quit anyways to quit. And now you got 95% of the people. And unfortunately, their business model, these rehab centers, is built around people coming back multiple times and them being paid multiple times by the insurance company for them to go through drug and alcohol treatment centers, not to be helped. When boom, you got Ibogaine. This thing's like, it's got to be close to 100% effective when done in the right set and setting. So disregard whatever you've heard from the authorities, from the medical establishment. Finally, we've got, RFK Jr., Health and Human Services, trying to bring common sense back here. But if you have receptors for psilocybin mushrooms in your brain and it can help you and you're not taking it because some type of fear tactic, you may lose your life or the life of somebody you love because you were unwilling to connect with these plants that are so safe and natural and here to heal you, that I literally feel bad for people like that. So I want to, just get the word out there. Um, Give as many treatments as we can away. Hopefully, once this stuff's legal, it's so cheap. The mushrooms are so cheap. The ketamine's so cheap. The only thing that makes it expensive is that it's prohibition and it's illegal, or that you have to do the ketamine off label with a doctor. So they have to pay their insurance bills and all that kind of stuff that make it expensive. But the reality is it's not expensive at all,
Mm.
and it's going to work for most people. It's going to work.
Wow, that was so educational, Zappy, and thank you so much, especially for showing us that, we are in this nature network. We're all one, and it's all made for us, and we are made for each other. And it's
Yeah.
nothing to be afraid of. And very,
Thank
very
you. I
educational
appreciate
today.
that. Yeah, I love,
Thank
like I
you.
said, Joel Osteen's in my first film, and I've
Yeah.
asked a lot of religious people. And I'm like, don't you think God would have put some things here to help
Mhm.
tap us into spirituality and help us to break addiction and disease? And doesn't that just like, if God's all knowing, wouldn't God have done that? And they're just like, yeah, I guess so. So it's like, these are things that are just starting to be really talked about in all
Mhm.
circles. And so, yeah, I encourage you, check out Psychedelic Concierge, check out my documentaries. Um, just start to learn. And if you get the opportunity to be in the right set and setting and to have one of these experiences, uh, don't fight it. Don't resist it, because chances are it's a lot safer than any other protocol that you could be exposed to right now for healing, real healing.
Yeah. And I mean, as a wife of a war veteran, I can really appreciate that. And I will put everything from you in the show notes. People just have to click on it. It's all you got to do. It's going to be a live link with all you do, the films, the your nonprofit, the concierge.
Awesome.
Everything's going to be in the show notes, so people can find everything
So
very
cool. I love
easily.
what
No
you're
excuse.
doing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
love what
Let's
you
let's
do. We
spread it
all
to the
have
masses.
audiences that resonate with each of us. And so I appreciate what you're doing. And I think, to help your family, to help the people that, appreciate you on this podcast and in your life, to save one of them would be incredible. But the fact that you get to save a lot of them and do it safely, do it
Hmm.
effectively, quickly, there's nothing better than that. It feels so good. I always tell people, being a psychedelic concierge, being in this industry, it feels so good because it's so fulfilling, and it's actually pretty lucrative because, whatever I charge somebody to chaperone them or to help them to integrate, if they can avoid, going to um rehab for 45 days and not being at work and maybe ruining their career or having to leave their marriage or
Yeah.
take antidepressants, all these things. It's like whatever they paid, it was worth it. And the fact that, again, there's so much compassion among the psychedelic
Hmm.
concierges and the community. Um, there's so many patients that it doesn't have to be uh, this, kind of regular competition thing. It's really like a co-opetition thing that's happening in our industry where, people have expertise with certain people have psilocybin mushroom, some people have ketamine, Ibogaine. And so, we're just sort of passing each other and saying, oh, you know what? This guy's got an addiction situation or this woman's needs more joy. Okay, let me connect her with the right people. And to know that you're going to help them, it's so fulfilling. And then the fact that you can make a career out of it and AI is not going to be able to disrupt it. I encourage everybody, dig into this, do your homework, and look at the stuff that's being put out right now. There's some of these big podcasts. I'll just lastly say, Andrew Huberman. A lot of people know the Huberman Lab podcast. He was extremely negative on psychedelics for
Hmm.
years and years and years. Then some of his friends at Stanford in the research department did an Ibogaine study using veterans, and it was so amazing what they found that even Andrew Huberman had to in that moment say, "You know what? I was wrong. These are my friends. I know they did the research right and the results speak for themselves. So I am now telling you I am pro psychedelic medicine." And that was one. And then two, Brian Johnson, the biohacker who wants to live forever. People are familiar that he's been doing all these things to try
Yeah.
to, for longevity, like, his taking his son's blood and 100 medications a day or 100, vitamins and stuff like that. And then a couple months ago, he had heard from scientist friends that psilocybin mushrooms may have a lot to do with longevity. He took all his biomarkers. He then took 5 grams of mushrooms, which is a hero dose, a good dose, and he came out and they checked all his biomarkers while he was on it and then after. And it came out and he's like, oh my God, like this is the best thing for longevity that I've ever seen. This is like, extending your telomeres, reconditioning your brain, actually making you live longer. He wound up doing a second dose of it to test it again, and his results are even better after the second one. He's now about to try something called 5-MeO DMT, because with this DMT, which is naturally in our system, some plants and some animals and things have high levels of DMT. So you can take that, and according to early results, DMT is what is rewiring people's brains after a stroke. So you can basically take DMT and rewire your brain from a
Hmm.
stroke. So all of this stuff, we're lucky. We're living in the internet age of social media and AI where these things can't be suppressed anymore. Brian Johnson, like nobody's going to tell that guy that this isn't working. He feels incredible. He said it was one of the top experiences of his whole life, the experience, but he's like the biomarkers. This is undeniable. This is our best longevity solution, you know? And so Andrew Huberman, same thing. There's nobody can tell this guy after his friends did this research that Ibogaine is not effective for addiction beyond anything else we have. So, you know, it's just happening now. I mean, Brian Johnson took the mushrooms like 2 months ago. So it's like, it's so fresh what we're realizing that I think, you know, thank you for doing what you do and being
Hmm.
open-minded to different wellness solutions that maybe you haven't tried all of them, but you're willing to educate yourself and think about them and try them. And so any psychedelic concierging that you need or anybody needs, feel free. I'm Zappy Zapolin on social media. Reach out, say hi, ask a question. Always happy to support. So thank you.
Awesome. Incredible. Incredible, Zappy. Thank you so much. Y'all, leave a comment and ask questions and do all the things like, subscribe, share this, especially share this episode when you know someone who could really benefit from this, just from the idea at least. Plant a seed. And thank you all for tuning in. And I see you again next Monday. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Leave a comment, give it a thumbs up, a review, and share it with somebody you think needs this. Have a fabulous day. See you next time.